Hello everybody, welcome to the Abbots Address. Today is Tuesday, December, 22nd, 2015. So there's a couple of things that I'd like to have some conversation about today. One of them is I want to continue on the Buddha's refutation of the caste system and that sort of model of societal discrimination that was relevant to his time and place, and look at how that is relevant to us. But then also, I'd like to share some really wonderful developments in the Sangha that have to do with families and parenting, and some developments and support for many of the families in our community that have young kids or teenagers or even adult kids in some cases. Arguable, right? But to talk about, some of the amazing things that are going on there, and then also, hopefully, to respond to some queries about parents about how to deal with Santa Claus in terms of practice and home life, and how do you handle Santa Claus and the stories and all that. So that's a big topic for today, but that's what I'm going to try and do. So first thing on the queue, let's continue our conversation about discrimination in the caste system with the Buddha. This is from Bhikkhu Bodhi, my friend's wonderful translation of some of the Pali canon. It's called In the Buddha's Words. It's a wonderful volume to get in touch with some of this material, and I recommend it highly. And there's a chunk in here called The Purification of All Four Castes. And last week we introduced the topic, and now we'll continue our conversation. So remember, Buddha is confronted with this young scholar who's reluctantly but going into the conversation about the caste and the Brahmins, questioning the Buddha's teaching that there are no castes, that they're empty of self-nature, and so on. So the Buddha says this. He says, first refutation was to talk about how, you're not born from Brahma's mouth, you're born from the womb of mother, from women, and we're all born from women, and we're all born from the blood of women and the blood of humanity. And get over this story about being born from the mouth of God or the foot of God or whatever. Come on. And then the young guy says, well, yes, but even so, they still say that the caste system is in place. So Buddha now goes a different attack, a different response. And he says this, what do you think, Alasayana? And that's the name of the young scholar. Have you not heard that in Yona and Cambodia and in other outlying countries that there are only two castes, masters and slaves, and that in fact masters can become slaves at times, and at times slaves can become masters in these countries? Have you not heard of this? And then the young scholar says, well, yeah, I have heard of that. That's true. And then Buddha says, well, then, on the strength of what argument or with what support or with what authority can the Brahmins say that the Brahmins are the highest caste, and with all these different castes? Now, the reason he's saying this, to make it a little more accessible, he's saying, look, this stuff is all cultural. It's relative to the culture that you're in. In this system right now, there's, 4 or 5 castes, whatever it is. But look, down the street, there's only 2. So how can you say that this is the divine order of the Almighty? See, how can you appeal to the authority of these scriptures and say that that's sufficient? And it's clearly not. This is something that depends on context and in time. And this is an important thing for us to remember. Don't forget here that the caste upholders of this time, they're referring to it's a classic, it's called the appeal to authority is what it is, okay, in rhetorical language. It's when somebody says, well, it's in the holy book, so that's the way it is, because God said so. Or some other authority, it doesn't have to be a religious one, but that's how it's being used here. And the Buddha is saying, well, you're appealing to the authority of the Vedas for the, perfect relationship with the caste system, but look, it's not that way all over the place, so how can you say this is the divine order? And I think it's a good point for us to realize, what are the cultural myths that we all have taken in and taken on and live in that really, they're optional. These things aren't, it's not true. And in Zen, one of the things that's the most important to me is, There's no authority outside. You've got to have your own experience of awakening. You have to have your own experience of wisdom, of the true nature of reality. And therefore, your own compassion comes from this. And your own presence, your own stability, your own creativity, it's your own practice. No one can do this for you. Yes, community is critical. Yes, the teacher is critical. Yes, the teachings are, but ultimately it comes down to your own internal experience. And that is the perceptual shift that's required. It's not going to do you any good to appeal to some quote that the Buddha supposedly said on a little meme on Facebook. It's okay to do that. They're nice reminders. But ultimately, you have to see the truth of that statement for yourself. Make your own quote. See, it's coming from your own experience, not coming from outside. So that's the point here. Look, how can you say that it's divinely ordered that there are these different castes? Look, there's different people with different opinions about it. Different cultures run differently. How about that? What's the core truth that doesn't depend on some kind of external, particularly some ridiculous holy text from some ancient time? I mean, come on. Read the news today and see how much difficulty and trauma is being inflicted over conflicting God concepts. Let's get over this, shall we? Now, a close story to that is Santa Claus. Okay, I've had a number of parents say, "Look, Rinsen, how do we deal with the Santa thing?" Like people are telling me their parents are really invested in the normative Santa Claus experience and Christmas and all this kind of stuff and gifts and down the chimney and all this kind of thing. But there's some ambivalence about that because, some people say that, look, when the kid figures out that there isn't such a thing as the literal Santa Claus, it can be kind of a what the hell kind of thing. So how do you navigate this? Well, I don't think there's any one-size-fits-all answer to this. I think you have to incorporate the fact that there are the grandparents and that their opinions do matter. They have some right to a relationship with their grandkid that makes sense to them, and they have certain things that they want to pass on and experiences that they want to have, and so I think that's okay. And then at the same time, the nuclear family has, the responsibility to make its own call about how it's going to navigate these holidays and things. So, some places, some folks that I've known, they just completely try to shut it down, and then that actually creates a lot of strange feeling between the child and their peers, because their peers are having the kind of, normative experience of Santa down the chimney and Christianity and all that stuff. So it can be a little bit of a disconnect if they completely don't participate. For us and for our family, I think I can speak fairly well for my own experience. My daughter's now 15. When she was little, we just did straight up Santa with down the chimney and presents. And Santa also came to my mom's house, and so we would go there on Christmas Day. So we had the traditional wake up and presents kind of thing, and then go to Grandma's house, and there was more. Santa visited there too. And we had a great time. It was wonderful. My parents got to enjoy those moments with my daughter, and we all had a good experience together. And eventually, as the truth of things came to be, it hasn't caused any harm at all. It's contextualized for our daughter Isabella in lots of different ways. I talk a lot about the spirit of giving and this kind of thing, and it's fine. Now some people have reported to me that their kids have had a much more difficult time when suddenly they realize there isn't a Santa, and it can cause big trouble. I don't know, I haven't seen it myself. One thing that's important to realize is that we're not trying to, at least in the Sangha, we're not trying to hold up some image that Buddha's always watching you. There's this thing, the elf on the shelf I just heard about, where there's this little elf and it puts around, and the idea of this, believe it or not, is that the elf is watching the child and is going to report to Santa about their behavior. So there's like this big brother kind of elf thing watching you all the time. This is bizarre to me. This is really weird. And I would never talk to my daughter like that, or want my daughter to be influenced by that kind of mindset. You watch your own heart. How do you feel based on the experiences you've had today? What's your conscience tell you? how do you feel after what you've done today or what was said? And let the kids start to feel that for themselves, at least, when they're developmentally able to do this. So anyway, I guess I don't have the clear answer some people might like. It's a family decision to make. But I can say that for us, there was no trouble having a sort of a Santa Claus experience. It's been fine. She figured it out. And I always surround Christmas time with the winter solstice and all the beautiful teachings there about winter and light and dark. And then there's a whole lot of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and Gandalf that comes into play. For me anyway, I love that stuff, and the mythology and the archetypes and all this, and Santa's just one of them. Now there are some people that take Santa Claus and say he's a bodhisattva. He's a bodhisattva of giving, of ceaseless giving, of generosity, and point that out and kind of highlight that aspect with Santa. Some people will go so far as to put a little Santa image on the altar and kind of incorporate the story of giving and caring and showing up and using it this way. You can do that if it makes sense. It's fine. Ultimately, in Zen Buddhism, everything is an aspect of the self. And so the aspect of you that is ceaseless giving, the aspect of you that is joyful, the aspect of you that is all the things is true. And so let's make honor for them and space for them. Now, last thing I want to chat about, I'm sorry this has been a little long of a conversation, but the last thing is that in the community here in Toledo, in the Great Heartland Temple, there's a new kind of impetus towards helping families in a new way. We've, of course, had a very successful Dharma School program that's been running for some years now with some good traction. We've done a number of things in the past, but there's kind of a newer moment arising. And it's shaping itself up to be something like a parent support network. It's in formation right now. We had our first meeting last Sunday. There seems to be at least 3+1 areas. The first area is teachings about parenting and family life in terms of the Dharma and Dharma practice and Buddhism and Zen practice and how does this work. So that's one thing. Some classes, some seminars, some workshops, some retreats on this kind of topic. And I need to say that there's a lot of folks in our Sangha that have great skills to bring to bear to this conversation that I'm looking forward to getting them involved in this. We've got a number of counselors and therapists and very successful parents and people who practiced for years while raising families. There's a lot of nutrition here to be brought to bear. The second area has to do with creating events for the kids at the temple, most likely at the temple, some kind of activities and events that will give the parents some space, maybe some kind of a schedule, the first Friday or something like that, where the kids can come there and have an activity and the things will be taken care of in a well way. We'll find the best practices and follow them, and then mom and dad can have some space, that kind of thing. And that can go in a lot of different directions. And then finally, some impetus towards having some kind of parenting support so that there's a little bit of a deeper bench for folks. There's a lot of people for whom practice is important and dear, and raising kids is crushing in terms of time and involvement and everything like this, and the joys of it, of course. So some thought about how to create a kind of a connection network so that if a particular family is overstressed right now, another family can help, and we can have clearer communications of mutual support and peership around this issue. So all of this is forming. If you'd like to be involved in the conversation, you're welcome to be. Let me know, and I'll add you to there's a secret Facebook group that's been created for this conversation to happen. Let me know, and I'll add you to the group, and it'll be great. The other thing, the +1, is that it's important to me and to Reverend Doan that this is a peer-led, Sangha-led endeavor, that there is a clear vision and mission and some outcomes for the year and some kind of policies and some kind of shape to the thing, because we've got, I don't know, off the top of my head, something at least 20 families, at least, that have kids. There's probably a lot more than that. So this is, if we're going to help people on a wider scale, then it's got to be organized appropriately. Not overly organized, but organized enough that it's workable. Okay, so there, a ton of stuff. Merry Christmas, everybody. Celebrate the solstice in whatever way makes sense, the Christmas season, whatever way makes sense. Be gentle with yourself, be gentle with your family. If you find yourself engaged in a holiday celebrations and stuff, just enjoy. I mean, just relax, drop the stress as much as you can, and just, have a good time and enjoy being together with people as much as you can do that. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your practice. We'll see you next time.